Yeah, hey guys, today I'm going to talk about the do's and don'ts of coming off of antidepressants after long-term use. So I've got my brother here with me. He's just going to fire across a few questions and just see how we go. So I thought I'd give it a crack in this format, just being interviewed. So yeah, my brother's been with me over the last 4 years in this process, or the last 8 years, sorry. So we'll just fire across to him and we'll get going.
All right. First question. From your experience, what would you consider long-term usage of antidepressants, and how long were you on them originally?
It's a funny thing, yeah. No, good question. From my experience, it might be a bit controversial, but I would consider 0 to 2 years sort of short-term use, 2 years to 5 short to mid-term, 5 to 10 years mid-term to long-term, and anything after 10 years I would consider, in my opinion, long-term. The more we expose someone's brain to a neurotoxic substance such as antidepressants or benzodiazepines at a higher dose, the more chance we have at developing CBI, which is chronic brain impairment, which is the leading cause of psychiatric disability. So you often see people that are on these drugs long term at high dosages. It's very hard to come off as well. So yeah, that's my opinion.
All right. Well, obviously, knowing you my entire life, I know that you were put on these drugs at a young age. So what did you first notice when you were put on them in the short term?
Yeah, mate, I went for a few, traumatic things. I did my knee, I redid it again, and I went for a lot, but I was having a lot of ruminating thoughts. So I think it was just trauma based. But when I first went on these drugs, a high dose of citalopram, it was more just numbing of the brain, numbing of the mind, and that's what I was looking for. And I thought that was healthy. I thought that was a great thing that was happening to me, but I had no idea, the long term, consequences at the time. I wish I knew, but I was given no informed consent by my doctors regarding the long term aspect of these drugs.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. Absolutely. From my point of view, being your brother and seeing you go through all this, I think it's cruel, obviously, and I think that it's good that people know. It's not a long-term fix, and there's other alternatives. But yeah, so another question. What symptoms led you to get off your antidepressants at the time? And how long were you on them until that happened?
Yeah, yeah, mate. I was on these drugs for a total of 17 years in total. I was on high dosage of Selexia, so 40 milligrams, which is one of the highest doses, and then switched to Effexa, which is even a more powerful drug. Given a bottle of Xanax by a doctor and told to fuck off out of the office. But in total, 17 years. And the thing that really sort of drew me to wanting to come off these drugs was the cognitive dysfunction, was a numbness of the brain, was extreme levels of fatigue, constant tiredness, because you're putting a poison into your body. And I also developed internal tremors within my chest. So pretty much like a woman's vibrator just in my sternum nonstop. And I'd been on these drugs at that time for 12 years, and I wanted to get off them, and that was what led me initially to wanting to try and come off.
All right. So after your experience and how you've come off the medication, how would you consider stopping antidepressants after long-term usage if you're on the antidepressants and you're wanting to come off and you're suffering these horrible symptoms?
So I'll talk about if you're, stable on these drugs, if you're feeling okay, and you've been on these drugs, I'd look at hyperbolic tapering, which is a slow process at coming off these drugs. Where, when you've been on these drugs under the age of 25, you've been placed on them, your brain's still developing. Okay, and we're having neurological adaptations that are taking place within our brain. Okay, so when you want to come off these drugs and, you're going okay, I'll look at hyperbolic tapering, which is a slow process. So it gives your central nervous system, gives your brain time to slowly readapt to the absence of the drug. And, I know hyperbolic tapering is a really big thing in the community, but, as we get lower in the drug dosage, the more the receptors are being affected by the drug. So pretty much we want to go even slower then, because there's more structural changes taking place within the brain at those lower dosages. So yeah, if you're stable enough and you're functioning on the drug, that's how I would approach doing it. But if you're suffering adverse effects, it's a different story.
Yeah. Okay. Also, from your experience, what wouldn't you do, and what would be the worst way to come off these drugs?
Well, I cold turkeyed, mate, after 12 years. So I was seeing some lemon in the city, some deadbeat chiropractor. He told me to come off cold turkey, and my doctor told me to come off within 4 weeks. So I didn't really have a choice. So I came off cold turkey, and I experienced what we call a protracted withdrawal brain injury, which is pretty much an electrical cascade. It's severe neurological dysregulation. It's pretty much like driving your car off a cliff. That's what your brain is doing. So that's the worst way to come off a drug. And the people that I see affected the worst are doing these cold turkeys after long-term usage. And that the injury within itself can take many, many years, to recover from. And also people that are coming off these drugs cold turkey can have tardive akathisia and hypomania, withdrawal-induced psychosis, go into a lot of these school shootings of people coming off these drugs too fast. So it's just a nightmare, and I'm still recovering from that 8 years later, from that cold turkey attempt.
Yeah, it's not good, mate. As people probably don't know, I was there the whole time, so I've seen all this, and I know what these drugs do to people, and I think it's seriously dangerous. And when I hear people going on these drugs, I just shake my head and I feel sorry for them, because their families have no idea what's going to happen to them in the long term. It might be a good short-term fix. As you said, it stops the ruminating thoughts and stops short-term wise, but in the long term, these drugs do significant damage, and I've had to be there and see it all, and feel like, number one, it'd be so good to have some good support system in place if you're willing to come off these drugs, and make sure you have people around you that love you and that will support you in knowing what's going to happen. And find a doctor, find anyone, any medical professional who will have your back and then have some type of knowledge about it, which is very rare these days, because doctors how they make their money is selling these drugs to people, and it's sick and it's horrible. But yeah, all right, next question. If you've suffered a protracted injury from cold turkey, would you reinstate the drug, or would you just wait it out and just pray to God that you see some results and get better?
Yeah, based off my experience, it's like playing Russian roulette, with your life. But I don't have a PhD. I'm not writing books about this, but I've had to live it firsthand. So I do believe that I am the expert, and I have the best advice regarding all these people that write these books, and put them in our situation. Let's see how they react. It wouldn't be pretty, but if you were in this situation, I look at to reinstate a very small dosage, about 1/10 of the original dose, and I look to do it sort of within a few weeks and just see how you go. The protracted withdrawal injury is not going to be reversed, but it may help ease some of your symptoms.
Okay. Okay. So if you were in that situation of coming off your drugs and you're suffering all these horrible effects, what wouldn't you do?
So, based on my experience, Liam, what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't reinstate a high amount. If I was going to reinstate, no, and I wouldn't reinstate a year later. If I could go back in time, I can't, but I would wait it out.
Yeah.
I would wait it out because, we'll get further on when we talk about this, but the effects, the damage, the neurological damage from the neurotoxicity, now, it wasn't worth going back on the drug. If I waited it out in that protracted withdrawal phase, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, I would have been back to living life. And that's my biggest regret. But again, I didn't have the tools at the disposal. I had doctors who were fucking clueless. Support around me wasn't magnificent. There's very little belief or, about how severe, these drugs are and how they can kill people, disable people. So, yeah. But, here I am now making this content so people don't follow suit, don't end up like me.
No, I agree with you, mate. I'm proud of you that you're doing this, and I feel like it's just the whole social media community, and I see all these people, and I can just, I just feel like I see all these school shootings, I see people going crazy, I see all these people on social media going crazy, and I know that a lot of these people are on antidepressant medication. 1 in 10 people in the US are on medication, and their families and their friends don't even know it. They don't even know that it's the drugs doing this to people. And I know your followers probably know. You've talked about it a lot and how you know your whole story and stuff, but I don't think people actually know what we went through in that period and how much stress we were under. And I feel like if you have like a family and support, you're lucky, but you're not lucky at the same time because it's horrible.
Yeah, it's hard enough. If you're lucky enough, if you're lucky enough to have a supportive family and people that take you seriously, obviously you have an advantage over others, but you're still gonna suffer. Yeah, yeah.
All right. If you were to reinstate the drug, and again you were suffering adverse effects to the drugs, what should you do if you were that person?
Yeah, mate. It depends how sort of severe those adverse effects are. If you're suffering, tremors, brain burning, hallucinations, toxic encephalopathy, this is a sign the drug has become a poison. So, this is a bit controversial in the harm community or in the tapering community because all we talk about is hyperbolic tapering. But what are you going to do if you're poisoning yourself on a specific dosage? So I don't think the experts, I don't think they know because it's never happened to them, they've never experienced it. I've experienced protracted withdrawal and I've experienced adverse effects while on a specific dosage and toxic encephalopathy. So this may be a bit controversial, but what I would do is look to get off the drug as safely and quickly as possible. That's what I would do. Because if you can get off the drug and you have some protracted withdrawal injury or damage, there is a chance that may heal. But if you stay on the drug and continue to take a dosage, which is essentially rat poison, going to your brain through your blood-brain barrier, this is potentially long-term or irreversible. So again, what I would do is look to get off the drug as safely and quickly as possible. Hey, but if you can't get off it completely, just get down to the lowest dosage you can and just stay there. But yeah, from my experience and what's happened to me, simply staying on a drug and coming off slowly while you're essentially poisoning yourself is fucking stupid. And you're setting yourself up for long-term disability.
Yeah. Speaking of your experience, reinstating a drug and suffering these effects, what was the experience? What was happening? Everything. Just if you can just briefly summarize it to people, so everyone can actually know what was going on at the time, because they probably don't have a faint idea of actually what was really going on.
So this is my experience.
Your experience.
So yeah, I was experiencing, toxic encephalopathy. So pretty much the drug had become a poison, and because I'd come off too fast and kindled my central nervous system, my brain, I was in a fragile state. So going back on the drug pretty much just destroyed my central nervous system. So hallucinations, rashes, burning of the skull, chemical brain damage, ringing in the ears, heart palpitations, internal tremors, low levels of psychosis, hypomania, everything you could think of. Akathisia I experienced as well for about 4 to 5 years on and off until I got off the drug, and I'm left with the residual damage as we speak today. I don't think people realise what it's like to make a YouTube video in this state. Most people in my state now would be hospitalised with this level of harm, but because I've learnt to live with it for so long, I've just learnt to live with it. And so what would you do? I think it's the last question. What would you do?
Yeah, what would you do?
Yeah.
But I feel like you've already briefly explained that, mate, and you've touched on it. So
Yeah.
I think it's good that, that you're being able to speak about your experience, and I hope that, you can go on. I see, Dr. Joseph's show and bigger shows, and you can actually talk about like what's, really happened, because I feel like you do a good job at sugarcoating your experience and making it relatable to others. And I know that these drugs do a lot of damage to people, and it's just in the long term. Yeah, you're doing the wrong things, and I feel like you've done a good job to get through this and look after your body and eat well and do all the right things. And yeah, I just hope that this can lead to something and you can help people, and you're making these videos. And yeah, from a neutral point of view, it's good to see.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Well, good, mate. Yeah, thanks very much, Liam, for interviewing me and asking those questions. And yeah, thanks, guys, for watching. And I hope you enjoyed, today's interview. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.